Viktor Orbán's trying to do everything he can to stay in power. So it's really going to be interesting to see what is the outcome of this election. April 12th, it's coming up real fast. 250,000 people, it's been reported, gathered for this anti-government demonstration. This past weekend on March 21st, there were massive anti-government protests that took place in Prague. Biggest rally since, I think, 2019.
Welcome back to the Talk Eastern Europe weekly news roundup. My name is Alexandra Karppi, and I'm here with the other co-host, Adam Reichardt. Adam, how is it going?
Hi, Alexandra. Hello, everybody out there. It's going quite okay, I guess. It's spring, so that's good. And we've had quite a good response for our YouTube launch, which was just last week, and we've already this is, I think, our fourth video. So I'm feeling quite optimistic, quite positive about that.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we don't have Nina again for our news roundup this time. She's still under the weather, so sending her well wishes, and it will
Poor
be
Nina,
so good
yes.
to be back together. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
It's that time of year, I guess. We're getting towards the end of the winter, so there's always one last push on the cold front, it seems.
Yes. So we hope she'll get well soon and join us. And maybe before we jump into the news, Alexandra, I just want to mention to all of our listeners and viewers out there that Talk Eastern Europe is a patron-supported podcast. So if you like our work and you want to support us, you can head over to our Patreon page. We have links in the description, or you can go to Patreon and just search for Talk Eastern Europe. We have a lot of additional benefits for our patrons, a lot of bonus content. This week, there's an additional discussion that we released just for our patrons. So you can check that out. And we do thank all of our patrons out there who have been supporting us. Really, thank you so much. And thanks to them, we're able to launch this YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And they get early access to our main interviews as well. So it's just one of the many perks you already mentioned that we should definitely encourage folks to check out through Patreon.
Definitely.
But busy times, so we should dive right in. I mean, I know there's a ton going on in Hungary. Adam, where do you want to begin? There's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about. Yeah, I guess maybe I can start by mentioning the fact that this past Monday, for those of you who don't know, was the Polish-Hungarian Friendship Day, which is a special day which has been commemorated, I think, for the last probably 10, 15 years, maybe even more, 20 years. Basically commemorating the friendship between Poland and Hungary. It's been a bit more political as of lately, and I think this year is no exception because the Poland's president, Karol Nawrocki, who's known as kind of being more right-wing conservative president, he traveled to Budapest not only to commemorate this event, but also to meet with Viktor Orbán ahead of next month's elections, and I think also to show his support and to, of course, endorse Orbán and to show the Hungarian people that he has some support. The meeting, of course, was widely criticized here in Poland, especially from members of the government, including the prime minister and the foreign minister, saying that Nawrocki should not be supporting a leader who has blocked EU sanctions on Russia and whose campaign is basically being assisted by Russian agents, at least according to many investigative reports. So it's an interesting development in Polish-Hungarian relations, which have been pretty rocky over the last several years, especially considering the fact that Hungary is not very pro-Ukrainian, at least the government is not pro-Ukrainian, and that and then Poland is very much on the side of Ukraine, in the conflict with the Russian invasion over the last 4+ years now.
Yeah, right. Well, that was capping off a big weekend in Budapest, right? We had the CPAC over the weekend.
Yes.
I had to actually just look up what it even stands for. I mean, I know it's the largest conservative, right-wing conference really globally, especially in Europe and transatlantically, but it's the Conservative Political Action Committee, which sounds quite, stern and serious. And it's a huge event. I mean, we always get, those hot button speeches about the latest talking points on the right. And sure enough, we saw it come through once again. So look, all the right wingers you would expect were there, from France to Spain to our region. Just the usual, gathering of friendly right wingers, I guess.
Well, I think what's important to note is that CPAC Hungary, I think it's the only CPAC event. I could be wrong, but I think it's the only CPAC event organized outside the U.S. So when they have the big CPAC event in the U.S., usually it's like the big players. Trump is there and all the right-wing figures. But then, now it's kind of also a chance to organize something in Hungary. We know that there's a lot of support for Viktor Orbán among conservative circles, not just in the United States, but in other parts of Europe. And that was there was in conjunction with that meeting of the Patriots for Europe, which is the right-wing political grouping, which is actually now the third largest grouping, I think, in the European Parliament. And yes, includes France's National Rally, Liga from Italy, Salvini's party, Vox from Spain. So, this is the attempt at creating this kind of wide network of right-wing conservative movements. And of course, there is support coming from the U.S. as well. For this. So Budapest was basically the kind of capital of right-wing conservative politics of Western countries over the weekend and into Monday as well.
I don't know. Did the U.S. send anybody? I'm sure they sent, maybe not someone high level, but they must have sent some representatives, no?
Oh, I'm sure there were some people that came. I didn't check the roster, so we'd have to look that up. But I'm sure there's many familiar faces that showed up. And we should point out, Vice President J.D. Vance is on his way. I think he will be there. I haven't read the exact date, but it was before Easter, or maybe at around Easter time to even show the more kind of religious side of it, tradition in Hungary. So yeah, definitely U.S. delegations, I'm sure, are making their way, and Viktor Orbán's trying to do everything he can to stay in power. April 12th is coming up real fast, and the polls. I don't know if you've seen this, Alexandra. The polls are all over the place because I've seen some polls which showed Fidesz is ahead by like 5%. And then you have the ones that I think are more credible, but I'm not in Hungary, but I have seen some polls which did show that TISA, the opposition party, is like 20 points ahead. So it's really going to be interesting to see what is the outcome of this election.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would love, when we bring somebody on, which I'm sure we will, to talk about the election, how the Hungarian public views these kinds of events. I don't know if there's a cynicism, or does it really, foster that pride of, Hungary's place on the European and on the international stage? I would be very curious to just see how it's covered locally. That will be something we will have to pin for a discussion with somebody based there, because it's fascinating these weeks. I mean, it's just constantly moving over there in Hungary.
Yeah, it is. And here's one more story since we're here. And I don't want Hungary to take up the whole news discussion.
Though it could.
But it could. It definitely could. The recent report that came out, have you seen this? So from the Washington Post, this is information coming from European officials, that the Hungarian foreign minister, Szijjártó, basically during European Council meetings and high-level meetings in Brussels, when he's there, during the breaks, he leaves the room and he immediately calls his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, and basically relays everything to him, like almost live. It's basically live updates from EU meetings. And there is a lot of sensitive discussions that take place in Brussels. And he's feeding it directly to Moscow. And then basically they've been saying this has been happening for quite some time. And also interesting is that there hasn't been like a really official, at least as far as I could tell, an official denial of this. Rather, It's more like trying to discredit the journalists who have been revealing this. The key journalist, I think, is Szabolcs, who's an investigative journalist, has wrote about this. But it's been written about other places as well. So it's not just this one report. We've seen it in a few places, and I think European officials confirm. So this is pretty freaky, pretty crazy. And I don't know if we have such a thing as a European traitor, but if there was one, this is a candidate, in my opinion.
Well, it's ironic, isn't it? Because, I mean, we've seen the EU has been ramping up its efforts to protect against digital interference in elections and disinformation. And it's, sounded all the alarms that it can. And yet it's coming, from inside the house, right? This is a pretty wild story. And we have this every couple of months nowadays, years, of these spy scandals and this kind of intelligence concerns. And it's just, I suppose business as usual, because what can we do? I mean, it's really a wild situation there, really.
It really is, and I really wonder what's going to happen, to Szijjártó if Fidesz loses the elections,
right.
That could mean because Peter Magyar, who is the leading candidate from the opposition party, he has basically said this is treason, and we will prosecute him. So we might see him heading to Moscow real fast. That would be my prediction, but we'll see what happens.
Well, he has to go somewhere. I mean, most of the bad apples from the Balkans, at least, run straight to Budapest. And if that falls, then where will
we
they
got
go?
a couple. We got a couple from Poland there as well.
Right,
so.
right. All signs lead to Moscow. All roads end there, I guess.
We'll see. Anyway, I think we should move on real quick because there's a lot else going on, and I want to stay in the region and just briefly mention that this past weekend on March 21st, there were massive anti-government protests that took place in Prague. Biggest rally since, I think, 2019. So we're talking, almost over the last 10 years, 250,000 people, it's been reported, gathered for this anti-government demonstration. Basically, it was a message to Andrej Babiš, who was the prime minister, that there was a lot of discontent with the policies and the situation with the government. Many of them voicing concerns over some developments. Basically, we've seen some movements in Prague that they want to enact something like a foreign agents law or some sort of crackdown on civil society and independent media. So really like kind of a growing authoritarian move. And the Czechs came out really en masse to show their discontent. So I think it was a really, really important rally. And I'm really curious on how Babiš and his government, which is quite broad coalition of right-wing elements, how they're going to react to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, we have been covering here and there on the news the situation in Czechia, and it's been just sort of this incremental here and there, as you said, slight maybe authoritarian tilt, maybe not a full turn yet. And now that's finally added up, it seems like. We've got that snowball effect, and finally Czech citizens are saying enough is enough and came out in such massive droves. It's very impressive. So yeah, we'll see how the government responds. I'm sure it will be more mudslinging and potentially, disinformation against those leading the charge. But let's see.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think, Czech politics is something to keep an eye on. And especially as we may see some changes in Hungary. So does that mean that, the Czech Republic is going to be one of those more illiberal countries? We will see. But also, I think it's important to remind our audience that the president, Petr Pavel, is, much more on the liberal side. He's not from this, far right or right wing side. It's kind of an opposite situation what we have in Poland, because in Poland we have a more liberal government, which is also a broad coalition of, center right, center, and center left. And then you have a president which is much more on the right-wing side of things, more conservative, as we saw him going to Budapest even to support Orbán. So it's kind of an opposite situation of this kind of cohabitation taking place in the region, and it seems to be a bit of a trend. So we'll see if it happens in other countries as well. But
where we had the bucking of the trend actually this weekend was Slovenia. And we were talking, if you remember last news roundup, we talked about, wow, in a couple of weeks we could have a very different EU. It looks like Janez Janša, who's former strongman in Slovenia of the right wing SDS party, was going to come to power. But in truly a photo finish election result, it seems like the liberals, so the incumbents, have actually stuck it out literally by 0.02, percentage points, something like this. Obviously, this means there will be a shared, coalition government. So that will still, the negotiations still have to take place, and we'll see what the result is. But I don't think anyone was expecting, Golub, the now, repeat probably prime minister, to keep his office. I don't think anyone was expecting that to be the outcome, given the performance of his party. But wow.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where I think everyone's like, phew, that was close. I'm not following Slovenian politics very, very closely. I'm just curious if do you think they'll be able to form a government, either majority or minority, which keeps out, I guess, Janša's, party?
I don't know where things sit now. Honestly, I can't say I was following too closely because I really expected it to go much more in Janša's direction.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's interesting because it seems what turned the tide at the last minute were these allegations of election interference. So there were these allegations that Janša was linked to an Israeli private intelligence firm that was doing some illegal wiretapping. He's, of course, denied the allegations, but if we get more information that, indeed those allegations are correct, I mean, can you see a scenario in which they have to partner with SDS? I mean, I don't know. Is it viable? Who knows? They might not have many choices, though, to your point, because it was such a narrow margin. So we'll have to see. A very interesting situation, much more interesting and dynamic than, honestly, I even thought. So we'll have to have somebody on to help us understand that as well.
For sure. And the last piece of news. I think we'll head a little bit further east because it's we've been floating around Central Europe this episode, but Kazakhstan has basically approved a new constitution for the country. This was a snap referendum, which was held on March 15th. According to the results, 87% of the voters supported the document with a 73% turnout. Basically, this new constitution is going to introduce large-scale reforms. It's replacing they have like the two houses of legislature with just basically one. And it's creating a vice presidential office, which hasn't existed for 30 years in the country. So, some internal changes. We still, it'll be interesting to see what the exact results will lead to, whether or not this is going to be if this is going to be about consolidating power. Tokayev, who's been now in president for several years after Nazarbayev left, he's been, slowly taking the kind of the reins of power, following the rule of Nazarbayev, who was there for a long time. So this could be his way of managing more control in the country. But, we'll definitely have to see because, on paper, some of the reforms look pretty decent and could lead to greater democracy. But on the other hand, it could lead to also greater consolidation of power of the ruling party.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to speak to an expert about that turnout number, 73%. I mean, that's significant, and maybe
87% supporting, right?
Yeah. I mean, those are significant numbers, and and obviously in these more closed systems, right? How to read those numbers, it's different, but really interesting, right? When you compare to many of the countries we've already spoken about in Central Europe, where they struggle to get a third of voters out to participate. So it's a really fascinating dynamic, and I'd be interested to know from someone based there what it all kind of means. And maybe, as you said, we'll have to sort of see how it shakes out. The next elections aren't until 2029, right? So we have now a good runway to sort of see what this means for the country's overall direction. But yeah, interesting times. Very quietly, I mean, compared to a lot of the international news, just completely new constitution, new government, essentially, roadmap. So yeah, let's see.
Definitely. We need to keep our eye on what's happening in some of these countries because there are changes that are taking place. But as you said, the international developments kind of take precedent, and we might miss some of these developments. So that's what we're trying to do here at Talk Eastern Europe as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
A good topic to close out with, then, Alexandra, is just the kind of recap of the interview that we did this week. So for those of you who've missed it, our deep dive interview, which was published earlier this week, was an interview that we did on basically the Epstein files and revelations that there was a tie to Slovakia and a tie to the former foreign minister, Miroslav Lajčák, who, as you know, Alexandra, has been around for quite some time and even was a figure in the Western Balkans for some time. And quite influential in many. He was, the Secretary General of the UN General Assembly for many years. Not a low-level figure, and it turns out that the connections were quite close. So we managed to catch up with the investigative journalist who went through all of the Epstein files for this, Slovak connection. Hard thing to do. I really praise her for that. And she goes through it with us in the deep dive interview, which is available on our channel.
Yeah, I think I couldn't put it down once I had pressed play. I was like, I'll just, I was walking somewhere. I was like, I'll just sort of see how it goes in case we talk about it today. I was hooked. I mean, just the way the story kind of unraveled. Wonderful storyteller, really great investigation. And pulling some of the quotes from the files as well just really gives you a sense of the camaraderie, if not friendship at one point, that Epstein actually says he is my friend at one point, is just damning, I guess, and it's really a concerning kind of a reflection on Lajčák. But he's, I guess, tried to sort of go on a little bit of a campaign to save his image, but I don't think it's really been so successful, and he's stepped down, right? So at least for now, not much of a rebuttal from him, I guess.
Right. He's stepped down and he's kind of disappeared from public eye for the moment. So we'll see if he ever resurfaces or what. There will be more files coming out, and the question is whether there's more out there. So we'll follow up if there is for all of our listeners out there.
No, I was going to say that covering this, is it's such the amount of information that we get kind of spoon fed as the files are released. On the one hand, it's a massive volume to comb through, as you already pointed out. On the other hand, we sort of get it in these spurts, and sometimes with all that flurry, we miss these kinds of stories. I think for our region are super important and really telling. So yeah, really glad that you all were able to sit down with the journalist and bring that story to us. And as you said, we'll keep following it.
Right. And there was, I think, a question Nina had during the interview, and I followed up since then, actually, is whether there was any Polish connection. And in fact, in terms of connection to any of the political elite, there has not been really anything that has emerged. There has been a political kind of investigative commission to look into this. And there is some mentions of some guy who had connections to Poland, unknown character, but he was basically, his job was to arrange Polish girls for the island and for the visitors to the island. So that would be as much as it was able to get in there, but there was no influence as far as so far which has been released. Nobody's been able to find Epstein having a close relationship, not like Reichardt in Slovakia, for example.
Wow. Well, again, just glad we're covering it because it's still so much to come through. So
yeah, definitely.
And on that light note, I guess we can kind of close out then.
Yes, I think so. I think it's a good time to say to all of you out there that, if you want to support us, there are many different ways to do so. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, give us a comment, what you like or what your thoughts are on the different topics that we talked about. And of course, if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us that 5-star rating. Really helps a lot. We do appreciate everybody out there. And of course, we have a Patreon page where if you'd like to donate to us, you can head over and donate. And one of the things that we do at the end of every episode, and now since we have visual, not just audio, we do a special shout out. So we're going to put on the screen here a special list of all of the patrons who've been supporting our podcast. I think we're at about 68 or 69 people right now. So it's really amazing to have all of you with us. As we mentioned, we have a bonus episode this week. We don't just talk about the investigation from the Epstein files. We also talk with our journalist. She was able to uncover some ties with the recent Ukrainian corruption scandal, the Operation Midas, which looked into the energy situation. There were some business ties that emerged from Slovakia. And interestingly, very difficult to get this information and whether or not it's actually going to prosecutor's office. So we talked with Karin about that, and that's up there for our patrons and available on our Patreon site.
Well, yes, thank you, patrons, for all the support. Thank you, everyone, for all the support as we've launched the new video format. Yeah. Continue to bring in your comments and let us know how you think it's going. We're really enjoying it, though, Adam. I have to say, I think we're all enjoying getting to sit down and have a more intimate discussion now twice a week. So
yeah,
can't complain.
Definitely.
Can't complain about that.
And we really hope that Nina's feeling better.
Yes.
And we'll have her on hopefully next week. But I think with that's a good time for us to say goodbye. Thank you so much to everybody. And we'll be back very soon with another episode of Talk Eastern Europe.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.